They laughed at his weapon, but he left as their king. By ancient law, the one who wins becomes king. No sword, no armor, just a wooden spear. That was enough. The valley was silent save for the wind and the soft hum of anticipation. On the high ridge above the stone watchers, the elders of the realm stood cloaked in gray, unmoving. Below them, on sacred earth stained by the battles of 1,000 generations, 2 warriors faced each other. But this was no ordinary duel. Princess Lyanna, disguised as Prince Haurex in gleaming black armor forged from obsidian mined in the shattered Pine Mountains, had entered the trial not for power but for love. Her curved sword, cruel and ancient, had been wielded by her ancestors for generations. As first daughter of the Steel Blood dynasty, she was heir to the throne by birth and blade, yet her heart belonged to another. The other warrior wore a tunic of rough spun cloth, no armor, no shield, only a wooden spear carved by hand from the sacred hearthwood tree that grew in the center of his village. That spear had never tasted blood. The villagers called him Kale, and Kale was not supposed to be here. The challenge of the spear was an ancient rite, older than kings and kingdoms. When bloodlines failed or succession was disputed, the gods demanded a trial. No armies, no magic. No tricks, just 2 challengers, 1 weapon each, the wooden spear, no armor, no help, no mercy. By ancient law, the one who won would become king, but Lyanna had discovered something that changed everything. Kale had invoked the challenge not for power, but to win the right to court her. In the old laws, the victor could claim any prize from the royal house. Most sought gold or lands. Kale sought only her hand. She had watched him from her tower window for months. This gentle woodsman who brought healing herbs to her servants, who spoke kindly to children, who carved beautiful things from simple wood. When she learned of his intention, her heart both soared and broke. How could she fight the man she loved? Yet how could she let him face the real Prince Haurex, her brutal brother, who would surely kill him? So she had stolen her brother's armor, drugged his wine, and taken his place. Better she should break Kale's heart by defeating him than let her brother break his body. The horn sounded, echoing across the sacred ground. As she raised her sword, their eyes met through her helmet's visor. In that moment she saw recognition flicker in his gaze. He knew. Somehow he knew it was her beneath the steel and shadow. The duel for love had begun. Lyanna surged forward like a storm, her sword gleaming under the morning sun. She was fast, terrifyingly so, and Kale barely had time to roll aside as the obsidian blade carved through the air. But she held back just enough, each strike calculated to wound pride rather than flesh. The princess did not waste time appearing weak. She pressed forward, slashing, cutting, testing. Kale backed away, keeping his distance, gripping his wooden spear tight. It was light, almost laughably so. No match for steel. But it was never meant to match. It was meant to remind. The spear was the weapon of the people. Farmers, shepherds, hunters. In the oldest days it was all they had, and sometimes it was enough. "Run, little mouse," Lyanna called through her, helmet disguising her voice in harsh tones. "Run until I get bored." But her heart ached with each word. She had to make this convincing, had to protect him from the truth that would destroy them both. Kale didn't reply. He just kept moving, circling, breathing slow and steady. Every move she made, he read it. Every overreach, every footfall. He had trained for this, not with masters of war, but with the wind and rain and rhythm of the earth. His spear had no magic, but his hands were sure, his stance unyielding. He struck once, lightning fast, a shallow cut along her thigh. Lyanna blinked beneath her helmet. Even holding back, he had found his mark. "That won't happen again," she growled. But it did, again and again. Kale was a shadow, always just out of reach, his spear flicking like a serpent's tongue. The crowd, silent at first, began to murmur. They had expected a massacre, not this elegant dance between opponents who seemed to know each other's every move. What they witnessed was not hatred, but a conversation conducted in steel and wood, a language of love disguised as war. Cale's father had been a woodsman, his mother a healer. He'd grown up watching animals fight for territory, for mates, for life. He'd seen how the stag beats the wolf, not with force, but with timing. And he'd learned something else too. Pride kills. But as he fought the armored figure before him, he realized this was no prideful prince. Every strike was measured, every advance followed by retreat. The warrior in black fought like someone with something precious to protect, not someone seeking to destroy. Through the visor's shadow he caught glimpses of familiar eyes. Eyes he had loved in dreams, eyes that haunted his every waking moment. The princess fought like a champion, but her heart fought like a lover, betraying her with every gentle parry. When Lyanna lunged high, Cale ducked low, not to sweep her leg as he could have, but to avoid the strike he knew she had aimed deliberately wide. When her sword came sideways, Cale jabbed straight, but his thrust stopped just short of her armor. Every move was simple, efficient, taught not by masters but by necessity, and by love. The spear began to crack at the tip. It didn't matter. He only needed it to last long enough to understand what was happening in her heart. Lyanna's strikes became more erratic, not from anger but from anguish. Her armor weighed heavy now, and Cale could see the fatigue in her shoulders, not from battle but from the burden of deception. Every breath she took was loud, rasping through the helmet. She wasn't used to being hunted by someone who knew her soul. In the quiet moments between strikes when they circled each other like dancers, Cale began to speak, not to the crowd, but to her. "I know why you're here," he whispered, his voice carrying only to her ears. "You think to protect me from your brother's blade, but don't you see? I invoked this challenge not to win a crown, but to win the right to love you openly." Lyanna's sword trembled. Behind her visor, tears mixed with sweat. How could she tell him that she felt the same? That every night she had watched him from her tower, every moment they had shared in stolen glances across the courtyard had carved itself deeper into her heart than any blade could reach. "You don't understand," she replied, her voice breaking despite her attempts to disguise it. "The law demands a victor. One of us must fall, or both of us will be declared traitors. I would rather break your heart than see you broken." But Cale smiled even as her sword pressed closer. "Then you understand nothing of love, my princess. A heart that breaks for love grows stronger. A heart that hides from love withers and dies." The crowd began to whisper, not about the strange, gentle combat they witnessed, but about the words they couldn't quite hear, the tenderness that somehow emanated from this deadly dance. The stone watchers above remained motionless, but their ancient eyes saw what others missed. This was not a battle for a throne, but a trial of souls. Cale whispered silent thanks to the tree that gave him this weapon. Then he made his choice. If she would not yield her disguise, if she insisted on this charade that protected him at the cost of her own happiness, then he would force the truth into the light. "Forgive me, beloved," he murmured, and moved with sudden decisive purpose. It happened fast. Cale feinted right, then leapt left. Lyanna turned, sword raised, not to strike, but to follow the movement she had grown to anticipate. In that moment of perfect understanding between them, Cale drove his spear not into her body, but into the straps of her helmet. The ancient leather parted with a sharp crack. The helmet tumbled away, and Princess Lyanna's golden hair spilled free, catching the morning light like captured sunlight. The crowd gasped as one, the sound rolling across the sacred earth like thunder. The stone watchers, for the first time in memory, leaned forward. Lyanna stood revealed, her face flushed with exertion and emotion, her eyes wide with shock and something that might have been relief. The sword dropped from nerveless fingers, clattering against the stone. "Cale," she whispered, and his name on her lips was both confession and prayer. "My lady," he replied, and though his voice was soft, it carried to every corner of the arena. "I invoke the ancient right of revelation. This trial was entered under false pretense. The true Prince Haurex cowers in his chambers, drugged by wine, meant to make him sleep through his sister's sacrifice." The crowd erupted in chaos. Some shouted treason, others demanded explanation. But Kale raised his broken spear, and somehow, impossibly, silence fell. When he spoke, his words carried the weight of absolute truth. I challenged not for a crown but for love. Princess Lyanna entered this trial not for power, but to save my life. We have both risked everything, she her birthright, I my life, for something more precious than gold or steel. We have risked everything for each other. The herald, pale and shaking, looked to the stone watchers for guidance. The eldest among them, a woman whose hair was white as mountain snow and whose eyes held the memory of centuries, descended from the ridge. Her steps were slow but sure, and when she reached the center of the arena, she placed one ancient hand on Kale's shoulder, one on Lyanna's. "The law is ancient," she said, her voice carrying despite its whisper. "But love is older still. In the time before kingdoms, before the first spear was carved or the first sword forged, there was only this: two hearts choosing each other above all else." She looked at the crowd, at the lesser nobles and common folk alike. "The challenge of the spear has been satisfied, not by victory of arms, but by victory of truth. Both warriors showed courage, she in risking her station for his life, he in risking his life for her hand. Both showed honor, she in protecting the innocent, he in revealing deception." The elder's eyes twinkled with something that might have been mischief. "By ancient law, older than any written here, I declare this trial complete. The prize sought has been won, not by conquest, but by choice." That night, by firelight, the realm whispered a new story. Not of a king crowned by conquest, but of two hearts that had found each other across the divide of station and expectation. Kale the spear-bearer, they called him, but Lyanna remained what she had always been, herself, freed now from the armor of pretense. The real Prince Haurex, when he finally sobered, raged and threatened. But the stone watchers had spoken, and their word was law older than his bloodline. Besides, the people had seen what they had seen: a princess willing to die for a commoner's life. A commoner willing to risk everything for a princess's happiness. That was a love worth celebrating, worth protecting. Under the sacred hearthwood tree in Kale's village, they were married by moonrise. No golden circlet graced Lyanna's brow, no jeweled scepter rested in Kale's hand. Only the broken spear, carefully, repaired and wrapped in linen that had once been part of her wedding dress. A wedding dress meant for a political marriage that would never be. The ceremony was simple. Kale's mother, the village healer, spoke the ancient words. Lyanna's hands were rough now with calluses from learning to work wood beside him. Kale's hands were gentle as they traced the scars left by her brother's sword during their childhood sparring matches, scars he had kissed and called beautiful. "You gave up a kingdom for me," he whispered as they stood beneath the stars. "No," she replied, taking his scarred woodsman's hands in hers. "I found one." The stone watchers had decreed that Lyanna's birthright remained intact. She was still princess, still heir if she chose to claim it. But kingdoms could wait. Love once found should be savored. They built their life in the village where the hearthwood tree grew, where spears were carved and healing herbs were gathered. She learned the rhythm of the seasons from him. He learned the weight of responsibility from her. When travelers came seeking the famous couple, they found not a displaced princess and an ambitious peasant, but two people who had grown into something neither could have been alone. Years later, when the old king finally died and the realm called for Princess Lyanna to take her place, she returned to the capital with Kale beside her, not as consort, but as equal. The wooden spear hung in their throne room, a reminder that sometimes the simplest tools are enough to reshape the world. By ancient law, the one who wins becomes king. But by older law, the law of hearts choosing freely, of love given without conquest, both had won, and both would rule. The realm prospered under leaders who remembered what it meant to fight not for power, but for each other. And in the village, where it all began, the hearthwood tree grew taller, its roots deeper, nourished by a love that had transformed two hearts, and, in doing so, changed a kingdom forever.